Well, hello there. Welcome to the Obi Thorn Alliance. I'm Jacob.
And I'm Luke.
And if you like different opinions, I'm someone that's on a person on the autism spectrum.
And I'm going to give the opinion of someone that's not on the autism spectrum. So if you like our videos, don't forget to like and subscribe, turn on the notification bell. We'll be uploading several videos per week on lots of different topics. And what is our topic today, Jacob?
We're doing a full review on Marvel's newest show on Disney Plus, Moon Knight Season 1 review.
So this just finished. We've had a lot of back and forth debate about this show, what we did and didn't like about it. I haven't seen what other reviews are giving it, but I'd like to find out actually, because maybe I'm the only one that thinks this about the show. So without giving away my rating, let's get into a summary of what is Moon Knight.
Well, I guess to summarize the show is in a non-spoil way, we get two different personalities and the show mainly deals with mental health issue. I think it does reasonably well.
I think the mental health element is a cool thing to add. Did they get it right? It's up for debate. We'll talk about it later. So we've got Oscar Isaac, main character, played by someone with... Do we know if it's a split personality? Do we know if it's his dreams? We don't find out till later on. So we've got that. He's insomnia, struggling to sleep. He's a British man that works in a museum, and then sometimes he's an American man. So he changed between these two characters, and then sometimes when he needs to, he turns into this suit and becomes the Moon Knight.
Yes, and we get good quality action scenes, but if you're someone that loves action, you're probably going to be frustrated because there's not enough explaining how Moon Knight works and actually developing Moon Knight. I think me and Luke have different opinions about that. I really enjoyed that it's basically an origin story of more the person behind the mask, but I agree with Luke because I feel Moon Knight isn't developed well enough. So yeah.
So going back to the summary, so we've got Oscar Isaac playing Stephen Grant and Marc, can't think of his last name, and he swaps between these personalities. One, he's shy, British, bit confused what's going on. The other one, he's confident and is a spy of some sort. And then they have this god Khonshu that's talking to them in their head and appears sometime. And this god is what gives them their powers to become Moon Knight. And what is the main dilemma of the show? We've got a villain, and what does the villain want?
Basically to bring this other god back so we can see the dude that is in the end of the world, really.
Yeah, he has this belief, that people need their scales to be balanced, which must be built upon a Egyptian god, or philosophy or something they believe in, that in order to go to the good afterlife, you need to have your scales balanced. You need to be a good person. If you don't, you go into the sand and the abyss and you're there for eternity. So he believes it's his job to bring back this god who will judge people on their scales before they even commit evil or before they die, so that they'll stop committing evil. Where Khonshu, who gives Moon Knight his powers, he believes in a very similar thing. He wants to judge people, but he doesn't want to judge them before evil is done. He wants to wait until after the evil has been done, and then their judgment will come to them in the afterlife, opposed to them dying before they've even committed act, just because they know they're going to become an evil person. What happens throughout the show with this battle, and what do we learn about Moon Knight?
Basically it comes between, is what's going on even happening, and then we have different arguments. Is Khonshu taking advantage, and kind of, you know, do we even know what is everything what's happening real, going back to the mental health issues?
Yeah, this show is full of moments of, is this life? Is this death? Is this a dream? Is it a reality? Is this personality? Is that personality? It's lots of chopping and changing, which gives a lot of opportunities for some really surprising twists, but it also has a lot of opportunities for confusion that just sends you off the trail and you go, this show missed the mark. So it's got a bit of both in it. And the show ends in a way where you can decide whether you think there's going to be more, or that's the end.
It's up to the actor.
Yeah, and I think it ends in a way that if it goes either way, I'm fine with, and some people will be disappointed with the ending. I think the ending did it okay.
Yeah.
Anything we want to add to the summary, or this is a hard show to summarize without spoiling because it has so many twists and turns?
I really think it does the Egyptian part. It's cool that they did something different with choosing a character that's very well, I'd never heard of Moon Knight before, and I like that they involved the Egyptian in the Marvel universe. I think that's a really cool aspect that they decided to do. And it's cool how they involve you know, different gods, and just the style of how they chose to do that, I think, was really impressive. And the acting performance, I think, is probably the best thing about this show.
Yeah, the acting performance was the standout for me, and I think it had a lot of potential with good elements with this mental health and the Egyptian side, but I think it fell short with the direction it went. But I've said this to Jake a lot off camera, that it is based upon a comic book. So they can't undo what they've already written, otherwise you're going to upset a lot of people. So instead of me criticising the show, I'm more criticising the hero and the comic book in general. That I think it's an average hero that probably didn't deserve a show. And that's probably why I'm kind of happy that it's possibly a closed-ending show, because I don't need to add any more to it. I think it's just going to make things worse, in my opinion, if you keep going. But some might think it can make it better, or they loved it. Some people may have absolutely loved this show. Moving into a
spoilers discussion.
You want to do spoilers before?
Yeah.
Okay. What do we want to talk about then?
I think the first thing to talk about is how episode 5 ends with Stephen making the sacrifice, and that was probably the best moment of the show, when we're seeing him with his arm like that, and then his body icing, and then you're feeling that was a really powerful moment. And I know your opinion is, and I sort of agree as well, is that Marc should have accepted is that he has become a person and he doesn't need the split personality, but the show is basically saying that they need to be intertwined and basically be with each other.
I just think that whole idea was quite strange, you know, that he had split personalities, but when he went to the afterlife, they weren't just personalities, they were split people, and they each had their own life stories and memories, and one could die and the other could live, but then through sacrifice and strange events, they both live, and then they both come back again like two separate people, which is where I think it missed the mark. You had this mental health. We can acknowledge that someone could have two personalities, but instead we're like, let's make it, they're not really split personalities. They are like two separate people that are, you know, crammed into this one body, which is odd. Like they had a good thing and they've made it a bit strange, where, you know, like that having two split personalities isn't uncommon for a storyline. You think of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. It's possible to have, you know, these split personalities, but this is almost like split people, and even when they turn into Moon Knight, there's they have different costumes depending on the personality they take. It's gone too far. It's taken a good idea and ran with it, and I think that's what's hurt it. Probably save it for another video, but I do have some theories and ideas of how I would rewrite the show to make it better, but that could be a long one. What was the best part of the show? Because I'm struggling to think of any.
I would say the best part of the show is Oscar Isaac's performance. I think he deserves some awards. If it wasn't for him, this show I wouldn't recommend it to anyone. I think the Egyptian aspect I really enjoyed. I enjoyed the mental health aspect of it, and I don't think they ruined it, but I think him accepting and then moving on, I think I would have preferred that aspect, because it takes away, like I said, from the sacrifice, and it kind of means nothing, but he became an unselfish person by getting Stephen back, and if it wasn't for that, we wouldn't got, it's a hippo there, so...
I agree. The acting was the standout. Being able to play the two personalities, swap between accents was... exceptional. It saved the show. I think if I was to rewrite it and take the story they had, but tweak it a bit, I think it could have been a lot better. But, easier said than done. But unfortunately, that would have thrown out the whole idea of the comic book and pissed off a lot of people. So I overall think this was a show made to please the fans of Moon Knight, pre-existing fans that already knew what was coming, already liked it, and wanted to see it in real life. And I just think if you weren't already a fan, you're not going to be one after this show. I think as many times as you can look at it, there's a lot missing. I think it's just Marvel fame. Like I said to Jacob, if this show was on, like Amazon Prime, with a no-name actor and didn't have that Marvel attachment to it, you would just be pulling it apart. You'd be like, this is so bad. This is such a silly idea. Whoever let this get published? But because it's Marvel, they know what they're doing, or it's already famous before it started. So I reckon there's a bias overall because it's Marvel. I think where if it was something different, you'd absolutely tear it apart for how many plot holes it has in it and how busy the story is. There's too many storylines in it that it's intense.
Yeah, I do agree with that. I think the major plot hole that has is that Arthur, with how he's able to... People just believe what he says, and throughout the show, it's like, why do people believe what he says? It's like when Khonshu basically said to the other gods he plans to unleash this other god into the world, and then for some reason they listen to the accused. It's like, that's not how a trial works. You're meant to hear out, and then somehow he wins the trial. That didn't work for me.
And it had a cool idea going there. The idea that, the Egyptian gods required an avatar, so there's possibly, people walking around the world that have, got an Egyptian god inside them. And again, that's a cool concept. So the writers sat there and I got this cool idea. They're like, yeah, that's cool. And they're like, this is a great story. And someone came along going, but I'm going to have this, and that. And you're like, you went one step too far. One step too far. But yeah, the villain seems to
charm his way through everything.
And I don't really get it. He is a bad person, but he believes that he can unbalance his soul by doing something even worse. And he has this strong belief in, he needs to do this to cleanse the world. And he's like, well, I accept that I'm unbalanced and I will take the consequences. And if that means death, then that's fine by me. And it's just a really odd thing. Is he a villain? Is he a hero? Is he stupid? There's just so many elements to it. There's a story there that they've just managed to get a little bit wrong. And I'd be intrigued to know how they did it in the comic books. before the show started, we had a couple of theories of what we thought would happen or from what we've read, and I think a lot of what I thought was correct, but then there was lots more that, undid what I thought could have been a cool story.
Yeah, and I don't think it helped with the show that each episode, different writers were on each episode, and I think it shows.
Yeah, you can tell that there's whether or not it's the writers that created the lack of cohesion, or maybe the overall direction of the show was just too hard to piece together. But this to me seemed like a show that was already complex enough that it didn't need another element of needing extra, different writers per episode. It was already confusing. Now you're just making it more confusing, where maybe one writer could have pieced it together more. Or maybe those out there that have read the comic books are nailed it exactly how it should have been, perfect. And we think that the writers got it wrong, but they just did exactly what they had to.
Yeah.
It's a hard one to tell, and I think it's a bit of a B-list hero that didn't deserve its own show.
And we also get to see in episode 5 why the Stephen personality happened, and do you think that was handled in a good way? Basically what happens is that Marc's mother was absolute hatred towards his son because the other son passed away, and then was abusive towards him, and then Stephen was the other personality. And then basically when the mother died, Stephen took over.
I think that's a cool concept. I think the idea that he developed a second personality to help deal with trauma is genius. That's smart writing. It's a cool idea. But they just managed to then ruin it. They just managed to ruin something that was a very, very unique, clever idea. I would have liked it more if it was, an aha moment where he realizes, I'm in control of both personalities, but I just forgot, or I didn't want to admit to myself. Kind of like that moment when, he's on the phone to his dead mother and he's pretending that he's on the phone to her, but you can see that he's not on the phone to anyone. It's like he knows that, but he's convinced himself. I would have rathered if he knew he had two personalities, but he was convincing himself he didn't. And there's some shows and movies where they do that, where you see this, Fight Club, for instance, comes to mind. There's that aha moment where you see, spoilers if you haven't seen Fight Club, where you see, can't think, Tyler Durden's the character's name, but the actor that plays the main character, throughout the show you see him, talking to Brad Pitt's character, talking to him, having these dialogue, having punch-ons, but then later when it's revealed that he has invented this person, it's a split personality, that when they show the camera footage, he's throwing himself against the wall and he's talking to himself and there's no one there. I would have rathered the aha moment been for us, he knows he's both people, but we were tricked as the audience to not know that he knew. But instead it's not split personalities, it's he has two people inside him and a third added and then a god that also takes over sometimes. There's lots of elements to what had potential to be a cool story.
And we also get a CGI fight between the two gods, and then the confrontational final battle at the end of episode 6, when basically Moon Knight and Arthur fight, and I thought it was an okay final boss. Basically we get the two gods and as Godzilla bosses, and then the two human avatars, I thought was a final boss. But as the final, I don't know, it just it lacked for me. I don't know, I just didn't, there was something about it that's this is a cool fight, but this wasn't an action show and you're making the action at the last episode. I don't know.
Well, it didn't make a lot of sense. We saw that, they released the alligator or crocodile type, god, and that was cool. It's a cool visual. The god then seemed to have gotten bigger in size every time the disciples went out there and took people's souls. But then why did Khonshu get big? Like, why did he get bigger? Well, he just could. Like, why couldn't the other god just gotten bigger? And then they were like, oh, we're going to continue this fight for all of eternity. Like, we need to stop. So they had already admitted that they continually fight, and obviously one can't kill the other because they're gods. So they were fighting for no reason. And could people see this fight? Like, the people in Cairo didn't seem to be worried the fact that there was like creatures that are hundreds of meters tall punching on above the top of a pyramid, and were they then damaging the pyramid? Or was it just all like we could see it as the audience, but it was kind of, they were like two ghosts fighting that the damage they were causing didn't cause damage to the real world because they could only damage themselves. A lot unexplained.
And then we get back to the mental asylum, and then I was thinking to myself, well, what's going on here? Are they doing the messing with your brain moment? And then Arthur's back here, and it's like, didn't we just see him get summoned, or just
Well, it later comes clear that when they're in the mental asylum, that's when neither of them are in control, and it's the third personality. But why is it a mental asylum? And I guess we have to assume that they make Arthur out to be evil in this asylum, so that's like, is the other personality's name's Jack, is that right?
Yeah.
Jack, it's like Jack's way of trying to convince them that he needs to die. But they knew he was evil all along. They just decided to, at the moment they could have killed him, like, nah, I'm not going to do it, better not. We'll leave that to like the other personality who seems to be a stone cold killer, but it's odd.
And then there's I waited because there's actually an ending credit scene, and then I asked you, did you see that ending credit scene? And then you said no. So basically the ending credit scene is Khonshu in his human form, and then Arthur's basically in the limousine, and then we're thinking, oh, okay, what's going to happen here? And then the driver's seat, the shield comes down, and then it's like, oh, is this a trick? It's Marc, or is it Steve? No, it's Jack. And then it's like, oh, Jack just shoots him in the face, and it's like, well, this is a interesting ending to the show. It's like, what are they saying? Are they wanting to make, if they do make season 2, about Jack and what he did, so it's more of an action orientated season and seeing what he got up to? Like, it's a strange ending.
Well, the thing is, do we assume that maybe, do they link it back to the main character's brother's death? Do they like, oh, well, maybe his third personality actually did kill his brother? And like, maybe, when the mother abuses them, maybe he warranted it because, when he became this evil Jack, he actually, no one deserves to be abused, but maybe he was abusive to the mother. So neither of them remember that. Like, is it just like that's the point of the third personality? But how evil is the third personality? It seems to me so far he's only got them out of trouble, or he's killed a villain. Like, does that make him evil, or he just lacks, consciousness? Like, he's like, he had a conscience. He's willing to, do things that the others may not. And is the mental asylum the coolest way to explain where they go when he takes over?
It's okay.
It's okay. It's just kind of odd. Like, sometimes they black out, and other times they go to the mental asylum. Like, they weren't consistent with what happens when he takes over.
So my thoughts about the ending, I thought I was really confused, and then the ending credit scene made it cooler, but definitely watch the ending credit scene. I think Luke was really confused, and then I said, watch the ending credit scene, and then part of me agrees with Luke with there not being a season 2 because this, I don't know, it's up to the actor, but they've left it a weird way.
I think the way they've ended it is leading towards no season 2, and then if there is a season 2, who would be the villain? I don't think there needs to be. I don't know who Moon Knight fights in the comics, but like it seems like, you know, he gets his power from an Egyptian god, and why would he care about what other people do? You know, like that's not his agenda. His agenda seems to be like to deal with the other Egyptian gods and the things they're doing. So it doesn't make sense for him to, you know, start to fight, you know, aliens or like bank robbers, or like it doesn't fit in. It doesn't seem like his agenda. I think maybe it's just a one and done because of that.
Yeah.
And I'd be happy with it. Talking about it more with you, I understand a few more things and appreciate what they were doing a bit more, but I still think that it wasn't a worthy hero to get its own show. Should we move into our verdicts?
Indeed, yes.
So we did our usual rating system. We've got different categories based on if it's a show, it's a movie, what type of movie it is. So generally it's around about, you know, the actors, their performance, the plot, the editing, the visuals. There's a whole bunch of categories, and then ultimately it gets a percentage based upon how well it does in each of these categories. So what did you rate this show and why?
Out of 100, I gave it a 68%, so that's a decent score. And thinking about it, I think it's a new superhero, and I think from someone being on the spectrum, I don't know, it's a very confusing show, I can see, but it does have its strong points. I think the acting performance is amazing. I think how it deals with mental health was going in a really strong way. But unfortunately, they kind of messed the mark. And then I think the ending's very up to if Oscar wants to come back to the show. And I understand if he doesn't want to come back. And I think in other areas, it kind of messes out the mark with kind of not answering enough about Moon Knight himself as a character. And, you know, there's still some things I'd like some answers, but sometimes that's good, yeah.
I gave it a 61% out of 100. I think that's about where it should have been. I had a feeling maybe it was going to rank even lower, but as Jacob and I talked through our answers for each question and went through it, I think I bumped it up a few numbers than what I had in mind. I think you thought you were going to give it a bit higher than what it got, and I was pretty convinced that when we were talking about it that you'd be surprised the number you'll give it, because I think you might be getting confused with good acting opposed to a good show. So once you broke down all the other categories, it lacked in a lot of areas, but obviously it scored very high in acting.
Yeah.
We also, you said that you thought that it would have performed better than a lot of other shows, one being Falcon and the Winter Soldier. So we did a rating of that and actually found that you rated that much higher than Moon Knight, even though you enjoy Moon Knight more. So it does go to show that sometimes the rating doesn't reflect enjoyment factor.
Yeah.
For me, Moon Knight, 61%. Surprised it wasn't a little bit lower. It has lots of flaws. It has a cool concept that I think could have been better, but you can't change what's already been written in the comic books. But if I was to, I've got some ideas I think could have worked. I don't know if there's going to be another season. I don't know where it goes from here, whether it goes anywhere. And
with Jack. And
it doesn't link into any other shows so far. So it was original. It was cool to see Egyptian gods. Just had some... The show overall was, you know, very confusing and required, you know, maybe a second watch or someone to talk to unpack a lot of it, to ultimately not have a great storyline throughout for what I would consider a B-grade superhero. So, would I recommend it? No.
For the acting, maybe?
Well, it depends. If you don't know who Oscar Isaac is or appreciate his other roles, then maybe you won't care as much. So I think you'd want to be a superhero fan to have any interest in this. And if you weren't, I think you'd struggle to get through it. You would find it quite absurd.
Yeah, I'd agree with that.
But if you're into Marvel, you got to watch it to find out. But I think it's, for me, probably going to be the worst of the new MCU Disney Plus shows that have came out so far.
Well, thank you for watching. We are the Obi-Thorn Alliance. See you in the next video. Let the Force be with you. Like and subscribe. Bye-bye.